Good morning, afternoon, maybe evening for some of you. Thank you for joining us today for another Green Sports Alliance webinar. Before I hand you off to our panelists, we're going to go through a few housekeeping items for the Green Sports Alliance. We are less than 10 weeks away from our annual summit. We will be in Cleveland from May 5th to the 7th at the Huntington Convention Center. You have just 3 days before the pricing is going to go up. Right now, it is supporter pricing. So grab your tickets now. If you're a member, just check your inbox for your discount codes. You'll have one from either Mika or Matt. We're releasing our schedule on it's actually going to be actually no, it'll be released on March 6th. You'll see it posted on socials and everything on the Monday following that. If you or you can find it by logging into the event app, which is called Huva. As soon as you register, it'll prompt you to make an account. It'll be very helpful during the event itself in terms of following the schedule. Or you can go to the Green Sports Alliance website. It will be there as well. If you work in a stadium or venue, I invite you to apply for our awards. Every year, we award our members in categories of energy, waste, and water based on improvements you've done against yourself in the last year. You have until March 3rd to submit and get recognized and awarded on our stage. And if you're interested in sponsorship, if you have if you work at an organization that with a product, service, or technology that you think can move the needle in sustainability for the sports industry, we'd love for you to join us as a sponsor at the summit. We have speaking opportunities, main stage, breakout, or roundtable discussions. We also have exhibitor booths available. You can see the perks are listed on the side here. You can contact me, Katie at greensportsalliance.org, if you're interested. A quick reminder, there's a chat box, just like regular Zoom. You can type all of your questions in there, and we will be sure to answer them about the last 10 minutes of the webinar. I'll shoot my email in this chat right now so y'all can see it. And now I'll introduce you to our panelists. We have Maria, Director of Analysis and Planning Operations at the Chicago Cubs, and Dana, the founder and CEO of Solar Stewards. Take it away, Maria.
Oh, no, this is me. So I'm here as also just kind of moderating the panel. We'll be asking some questions, but also just wanted to do a little bit of renewable energy markets 101 to give some background information, terminology that will probably be useful if you're not already aware. So starting with a renewable resource. So these are resources that are, produced by the earth and are renewable. So you are continuing to provide us energy. So this is wind, solar, hydro, geothermal. It's really important to be aware of the renewable resource that you're using. And as I get into this next point, what a renewable energy certificate is. So this is the tracking method for renewable resources. So one REC is 1 megawatt hour of power. When renewables are produced, they go up they're into the grid, and then the energy kind of gets mixed with all this different electricity that goes and powers different buildings or stadiums or venues. And so the way that you're actually able to know that you're using a renewable, 1 megawatt hour of renewable electricity versus, a non-renewable resource is by that REC. So it is the tracking mechanism with it where the United States and other regions track that actual usage of renewable electricity. So this is important because there are all different types of RECs, and it's important to understand that some RECs have various levels of impact. For example, you need to be aware sometimes you can be sold or you can procure very old hydro that is maybe 50 years old, and those still produce a REC. Is that a quality REC? Is that something that has a current environmental impact? Maybe not as much as some of the other RECs that we'll talk about later on in this panel. So it's just something to be aware of when you're procuring renewable energy, that RECs have different levels of impact, and that's something I'll talk about in a second. One level of, confusion that we hear sometimes is when your grid is already clean. So you are already receiving renewable, you're told by your utility, well, our grid is is provided 70% of renewable electricity. So how do you know? How do you differentiate? Okay, is that something that I can account for? This 70% renewable electricity it can be a bit confusing if you're just looking at this number. So your standard delivered power is the power that you are delivered through your utility, and they can tell you it's 70% renewable. But what does that really mean? Like I just mentioned, maybe they're counting some hydro from years ago that the RECs haven't been claimed, and they're putting that into your standard delivered power. That's a chance. Maybe there's a renewable portfolio standard. So these are in states all across the country where a state has a requirement. I need 50% to provide 50% solar to my customers. It's a state requirement. And so they are taking the claim of that actual renewable power and just providing you the mix on the grid. So it's really important to understand the difference between procuring your REC where you have that claim, you have the certificate for your renewable power versus just being provided standard delivered power by your utility. There's a big difference there. And so this all leads to the other half of the slide, which is on voluntary purchasing. When you are receives standard delivered power, you are not making voluntary procurement. You are just receiving what the grid already gives to you. There are a number of different opportunities to do voluntary purchasing as a purchaser of renewables. And so this is the way that you can have, move the needle beyond just what is normal in your state or in your region and actually require additional renewables to go online. And so this is where you use RECs to signal that you are supporting renewable energy markets. You can buy an unbundled REC or a bundled REC, which is essentially where that REC was originated. So an unbundled REC, that megawatt hour could have been produced anywhere in the United States or Canada, and you could be purchasing that REC, whereas a bundled REC needs to be within your region. So there's a little bit of a difference there if you're looking for more of a local impact. A Green East certified REC, those have a lot of the different requirements that I was mentioning before, making sure that the resource you're procuring is recent, so it's within, I believe, a year and a half, that it's not being counted towards someone else's renewable, requirements. So that is a voluntary program that has a lot of those requirements built in, so you don't have to worry about buying a very old, hydro REC or a REC that maybe someone else is also buying and making a claim for. Um, Utility green pricing, you can possibly opt into your local utility green pricing model where they will maybe charge a little bit more or not, depending on the model, and they'll just provide you that green power. And so that's something that if you haven't already asked or talked to your utility about, you may consider asking them. There's community solar, which are subscription models where different tenants can kind of subscribe to solar that's not on your property, and so it provides a little bit more accessibility or can provide some cost savings. There are PPAs, power purchase agreements, or virtual power purchase agreements. So these tend to be thought of as having more of an impact than just because you are providing the financial incentive for that power facility to go online. So you, maybe yourself, maybe your organization, maybe you're partnering with a few others, are all partnering together to provide the financial incentives for a solar plant or a wind plant, wherever it is. And you are the recipient of that REC for an extended period of time. And you're usually signing a longer term agreement, so your price becomes a little bit more stable. So that's something that you can do with a utility or a third party. So something to consider as well. And then more impactful RECs. So that's a broad conversation. Dana will give you some great examples of the work that she does. I was sitting at a conference, one of the first renewable energy markets conferences I went to a couple of years ago, and there's a panel on impactful RECs. And I think someone in the audience asked, well, how do I know if I'm buying an impactful REC? And every panelist went down the line and said, Dana is in the audience. Can you please stand up? She does this. So that was my first introduction to Dana 3 years ago. So she has examples, but these are, various levels of impact. It could be impacting your local community. It could have a biodiversity impact. It could, it really runs the gamut. So I know that was a lot of information, but I just wanted to level set a little bit. If you have questions, you can send me an email to follow up. I'm happy to explain any of these different options a little bit more. And I'll have questions for our panelists as well. But for now, I will pass it over to Maria.
Awesome. Thanks for that intro. I feel like I definitely needed that 2 years ago. And I will start by saying I am level beginner at this. And this is what I told Mika and Katie as we started planning this webinar. And they're like, that's great because there's a lot of people out there like you. So I will say totally transparency, level beginner, and I'm hoping to kind of help people out there that are in the stages that we were, about a year ago. So I'm gonna kind of just start by, sharing how we, started our journey and even just started conversations about it here. Because I think a lot of people want to do all the great stuff Mika talked about, but don't really know how to start engaging people, who makes those decisions, et cetera. Um, so for us, it came pretty naturally, which was awesome. And it came through corporate partnerships, which is even better because, that has the revenue tied to it. So it started with corporate partners, just they kept coming to us and we didn't know how to answer them. We didn't know how to say, yes, we want to go with you, or, this is the better deal, or actually, this is the better deal. So it was really great that we had kind of all of the inbound requests coming in and, corporate partnerships coming to operations saying, can we do this? Can we do this? What makes sense? And us saying, hey, we're not totally sure. Let's, ask someone in our strategy department. Let's ask someone in finance. So really that was the next step was this cross-functional education as an organization of what we really wanted to do long term. So luckily everyone agreed to kind of pause until we fully understood what trade-offs there were, and what came with all these different types of renewable energies that we could pursue. So what we did is engage experts, GSA, obviously our sustainability consultants, talked to a lot of different people. I had some initial calls with all the major solar providers in Illinois to really understand the goals and their solar solutions. And we got together, like I mentioned, it was really it was corporate partnerships, it was operations, it was our facilities teams and our strategy team as well, thinking about kind of all of these long-term agreements that you can get in with some of these things. So following that, our strategy team really modeled out hey, what was our data? What was our usage? What were all the charges that we were being charged? And what did this look like over time? So we could really model out what we used. So our strategy team created an ROI model based off of some of the proposals that we were seeing, all of our utility costs that were coming in, and some of the sponsorship revenues that they thought they could get from some of these deals. And then we did research what was all even out there, kind of everything that Mika had referenced, what were the risks and opportunities based off of all the, pathways we could go down. So we assessed a lot of different models. We assessed on-site solar, RECs, VPPAs, community solar, and we really had to ask ourselves too a lot about the risk tolerance because a lot of these are long-term deals. And then obviously with the on-site piece of it, what we were open to in relation to our building and our campus. Wrigley Field's over 100 years old. We can't just do whatever we want to it. It has landmark status. So it's what did we want to do? What could the roof be in 10 years? Or maybe we don't want to commit to solar. So there was a lot of talk about risk tolerance as well there. So sorry, Mika, you can go back. So then just wanted to talk about the decision of doing on-site versus not. You can go back just one slide. Yep. So on-site, we really discussed what was going to be the viability. What we found out was it just wasn't going to be a scalable option for us. It wasn't cost effective. It wasn't really operationally practical for Wrigley Field. One, structural aesthetically, there was constraints of the landmark. There was really a limited array of placement and where we could add on. There was the foul ball issue, kind of where they fly and hit the roof of where we were going to be able to put the solar. Um, like I said, it's a long-term commitment. It was really 20 to 30 years. And on top of that, if we owned it, there was maintenance, repairs, potential removal costs at the end of life. Um, the term length was really interesting, especially as it relates to corporate partnerships. So solar term lengths, right, generally at least 20 to 30 years. And most sponsorship deals are really only up to 5 years. So that's really tough to say, hey, X partner, you want to build solar panels on top of our roof, but you're only going to, pay us for 5 years and we're going to have this 30-year investment. So just the term lengths didn't really line up. There was also this point about capturing the tax credits and incentives going on in the area. There were a lot going on at the time, but they're also very hard to get. And then also we didn't know, how long this would last either. So that was part of the term length discussion. One of the big ones was just the energy output. I think a lot of people that look at solar, it's a great storytelling piece, but it doesn't necessarily, replace all of the energy you're going to use. Like for us, it was about 1% of our total usage to put the panels that we could put on our roof. So we didn't feel like it would actually like meaningfully reduce emissions or costs. And we did honestly weigh that storytelling and kind of inspiration feature because it is, inspirational to see, hey, if Wrigley can do it, we can do it. It shows us as thought leaders in the space. So we did definitely weigh that piece of it as well. But ultimately, it just seemed like there were other, potential routes, all the ones that Mika outlined that we could take with this. So really at the end of the day, investing in like the offsite solar, like we thought it could alleviate some of those capital commitments, but like also just bolster scale, bolster impact that, we really wanted to realistically achieve. So if you want to go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about our partnership with Invenergy. So this is kind of where we ultimately chose to go. So they became our ultimate or our official solar provider in 2024. We are so lucky to have Invenergy as a Chicago-based company in our backyard. It was really like the perfect partnerships. They're an iconic company embedded in the community. So they're not only just devoted to clean energy, but also, embedded in the community. So just like our values are really like in lockstep. So it could be a very organic partnership. So what this meant was we were going to be an anchor tenant to several community solar projects. Diving just a little bit deeper than Mika did into community solar, it's kind of just like joining a big shared solar farm. So instead of putting panels on your own roof, like you're able to like share the farm's total solar energy, and then it kind of shows up on your bill as bill credits. So basically, it lowers what you pay each month. And what was really cool about this deal is they wanted to target low to middle income families that wouldn't have access to this before. So not only were we bringing additional clean energy to the grid by saying we were going to be an anchor tenant and pay long term into this, so they could build more and more. It gave local customers the ability to just access real savings on their bills, which is a great storyline. Long term, our hope here is really to eventually generate enough renewable energy to help offset Wrigley Field. And then what we call diamond projects in the community. So that's where we put baseball and softball fields in the community. So as of right now, it was the commitment to be anchor tenants in a couple of these. We would love to be able to scale. And that's like the other part of the deal that we thought was really, really great was that, we could start small and then, scale to what we want to be, which was great. Um, Another really great part of it was just the financial alignment. So I mentioned earlier, there was kind of that mismatch of like years of owning, something for 20 years and then only having a 5-year deal. So the partnership revenue, for the 5 years, like we didn't have to engage in any like capital spend. So there was no like mismatch anymore. There wasn't any like risk reduction or there wasn't any risk. So we like reduced our risk heavily and no on-site maintenance, no like removal obligations, no structural restrictions on our building. Um, and then we got that like public facing value. So one of the big things like we like to tout in the neighborhood is, we're a good neighbor. It was something when our current ownership bought the team years ago that, we wanted to move in and be a good neighbor, a sustainable neighbor. So we're able to do that through what we're doing with the community solar as well. So really great partnership for everything kind of we were looking for, but it took us a long time to like understand what was out there, assess our data and what we needed, and then find the right partner to do this. So it definitely didn't happen overnight. There were like steps and we went backwards, sometimes to go forwards a little bit. But ultimately, like I'm really proud of just the way like the organization came together, hit pause when you need to hit pause, be really strategic in our approach and find the right partner to do this the right way.
That's awesome, Maria. And I have a couple questions for you. I love hearing about this partnership and this example. I'm curious, you mentioned some of the early on initial conversations that you had, and it came from a partner. I'm just curious what it was like, those conversations with other staff when it was, switching from realizing that on-site solar is not feasible and potentially going to an option that was off-site. What were some of those conversations, some of that learning opportunities or education that had to be had so people understood that you're still, receiving those benefits even if it's not on your roof?
Good question. I think we're still having those conversations with people still not fully understanding kind of what this all means. because it's not visible on your roof, right? It's very easy when you have something, tangible sitting on your roof and when you're saying, hey, we're doing, solar panels. Everyone understands that. But community solar, like it's not a tangible thing. So I think it's hard to understand for people. So it worked for us is like gathering all the data and showing it to the right people and admitting like, hey, none of us are the smartest people in the room here, but like let's find the people who understand like financial, viability, long-term commitment, payback periods, like all the things that are going to speak to leadership when you're making like a multi-million dollar decision like this, that you like make it tangible, right? Like you put some of those things on paper, you show people like, hey, solar panels aren't going to give you, the impact you want. And there's this long-term risk. So, there's one thing to all get in a room and talk about it, but there's another thing to like, and this may sound archaic, but like to put it on paper and show people and take that next step to actually run the full evaluation out, and present that in a way where again it means something to someone making the decision, because I think in this energy world it's really, I mean for me at least, who's not trained in it, it's really hard to understand. So imagine someone who's not, on webinars learning about this, trying to understand that. So I think that that's what really made the move to like, hey, this is real. We run these assessments, we have the data, we're all confident that we're making a good decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned 1% of the total output if you were to have done on-site solar. Is that something that you think is pretty typical for, stadiums or venues? I agree. You mentioned, it makes it's cool. It shows leadership to have solar panels on your roof or on your actual arena. But that percentage, 1%, is very small compared to the impact that you can have off-site. So I'm just curious, like that 1% number, was it a surprise internally? Was that a big reason that it shifted over? How did that kind of influence your decisions?
I mean, I always thought it wouldn't be like super large, but I didn't think it would be that small, to be honest. And that may be particular to us, just because like where we could put them, what our roof could bear, just because it is a historical building, and some buildings may be able to do more, or do them on the sides, or do them in a parking lot to have a bit more. But I think unless you have like that off, site array, you're not going to get, the majority of your energy from solar. I've seen other places do thermal and other things as well to like get that percentage up, but for us, like it was very, very small.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in terms of the future, do you see like what looks like the future for this solar project, and what are some opportunities that you see to continue learning or improving, and what does that process look like for you internally? Is that something that you're leading? Is it involved with your partners as well? I just love to get insight into that conversation.
Yeah, like I said earlier, like this can scale, which is really cool. So I love that idea of this always being like a scalable asset. I always think too, it's great that to serve fans that come to your ballpark, but not all fans can come to your ballpark regularly. So we've discussed like, hey, can we make this a really cool, off-site place, in Southern Illinois where, people are still fans but can't come here, and make it almost like a little Wrigley, and you make a little offsite campus there. So there's a lot of like, I think, marketable things you could potentially do there. Um, I would say too, there's just a lot of technology out there that, again, people are kind of coming to us with, where it's lighter solar panels that can, pop on the side of a building. And we kind of have a little bit of a campus here. So there's not just these heavy, solar panels anymore. Technology is constantly, evolving. So as new, products come in, being able to like test that in certain areas instead of like a full scale rollout is always interesting to us. So we can like iterate on it, like test proof of concept and then iterate on it. Um, Something we were brought pretty recently actually was battery storage. So we own our facility at Wrigley, so we're kind of in charge of the capital improvement and maintenance program. So evaluating our long-term capital plan to involve, green energy and what that means, what the costs are, what's kind of the technology horizon on some of these, like what's still up and coming, what's maybe further down the line, but like budgeting dollars to like down the road, we can like at least address what's out there or some of the things that have come to us, and having some of that budget already like baked in to the plan of, hey,
Mm.
we may not know what this means for us, but we're hearing some of these technologies are coming along, and at least to be able to evaluate them, and see maybe what an ROI, what a payback period on them is. So that's something we're definitely doing. And then
Mm.
I think the last thing there too is just partnering with like the city and local like government authorities, and like what's their plan and how can we help? Because if we're not helping them, we're hurting them, right? So it's
Mm,
like, how do we, partner with local government authorities on what they're trying to do to Chicago, bringing green jobs here? What's something that we can help be a leader in that space and potentially, implement here, try out, convene people, right? What can we do beyond, just technology? But if we can convene, all the right people in the room, like at the end of the day, we play baseball. We don't like, we're not experts in solar energy, but we have a big platform, right? So how can we use that as well is
mm.
important to us.
Yeah, very. And I loved how you touched on how your, community solar project has a tangible benefit to some of the lower income folks in your community with some cost savings. And so there really is a benefit, to the local community. I'm curious and last question for me before we move on, but just curious from a standpoint of some others in the audience who may be evaluating these different costs or ROIs, what were there any potential savings that you just wanted to highlight that you found through renewable projects or anything that was surprising during that process of actually seeing how much is this going to cost over a long-term period? Can we make any money back? And what kind of investment is this looking like?
I think for us it was tough because of the markets here. And again, I don't want to go too much in depth in that because I'm not an expert, but the markets are so different in different states and cities, like in the incentives of if you're going to get dollars back, not going to get dollars back, like it's very volatile and you honestly don't know. So we didn't go into it like expecting cost
Mm,
savings. We were like, this is a partnership and we got, marketing dollars up front, right? So as long as like we weren't losing money head over foot, we were like, we weren't so much concerned about that because of the corporate partnership assets, the community involvement assets.
mhm,
And sometimes that's hard again to put in a spreadsheet. That's one piece of telling that story. But what you were able to do kind of on the side with the corporate partnership and with the community engagement, like that matters. So we didn't necessarily go into it like expecting, an ROI on our energy necessarily doing it this way. Like there were
mm,
ways to go about doing that if we were to own our own solar and do a lot of other things, but it's just like we didn't want to take on that risk. So we were
mhm.
fine not having like a major, ROI on this one because of the corporate partnership dollars, which was huge.
Yeah, that's great. Great perspective, I think, to share. Just that sometimes you can come at it with different lenses, looking for a return on your investment, looking to have an impact in your local community, support clean grid. So there's so many different angles that you can come at this renewable energy world with because there's so many different opportunities. Cool. I think we'll pass it over to Dana to share her screen, and then we can do some more question. Oh, no, never mind. One more
Oh, just
slide.
a quick, oh yeah, no, real quick, just on that, some just really good feedback from the local business community, from our city mayor. Like this deal really, I think it's interesting because some deals really resonate with fans and some
Mm,
deals really resonate with like the local business community. And I think we were pretty surprised how much like credibility we got within the local business community on this, which was awesome because Illinois is so focused on, green jobs. We got some really great, publicity and credibility, I'll say, in some of these companies. So just wanted to point that out that's another, win that necessarily we didn't think, would happen out of this. But, back to your ROI discussion, like, if you want to build credibility in your community, if you're trying to, I think a lot of us, we're always trying to do more at our ballparks, and sometimes you need, city, state, government approvals for that. So, being able to be recognized for something like this by those types of leaders, hopefully has benefit down the road too. So just wanted to point that out.
it's awesome.
I'm gonna stop sharing. You can go ahead, Dana.
Okay.
Thanks, Maria. That was great.
Yeah, that was great. All right, I think I've got the full slideshow. Can you see the full slides? Excellent. Well, thank you, Maria. That was really exciting and impressive. And I think you covered a lot of some of the basics. And thank you, Mika, as well, so that we can talk a little bit about just the landscape. As you mentioned, it is different in a lot of local um, markets. And so, when we saw this challenge 10 years ago at Solar Stewards, we really thought we need a solution that's going to engage more folks, and particularly communities, in these renewable energy opportunities. And so That's what we sought out to do. So just quickly about us, we're a social enterprise. We're based in Atlanta, Georgia, city too busy to hate. We do work nationally and also internationally with our program and our marketplace. And in addition to fostering these types of opportunities, we're very active in the climate justice and renewable energy space. And really grateful for Green Sports Alliance that's providing all of this industry support for sustainable measures in sporting. So I think Maria did a really great job in talking about, kind of the landscape and the opportunities and what we saw, these challenges when it came down to engaging, all types of communities in renewable energy opportunities. And number one was the current strategies available for corporates to buy their renewable energy are just invisible to fans and communities. What is a carbon offset? What is a carbon credit? What does utility scale mean? And it just wasn't resonating across their value chain. Additionally, in being a community-centered organization, we know how our communities are just really having a hard time with the rising costs of energy and the impacts of climate change. And when I say the impacts, I'm talking about these weather events that folks need to shelter at a community center, or they're dealing with heat issues where the seniors have to go to a cooling center because heat is a threat to people's lives, or conversely, weather events where they need some heat. And so, this can be achieved with resiliency centers, but that infrastructure was still needing additional support, and local governments were strained in providing that. And then, of course, local communities, how do they benefit from these carbon mitigation strategies? What we saw was really an industry that was kind of preaching to the choir and sadly leaving a lot of partnership opportunities out. So of course I had to put this in here because wasn't everybody so excited to see Bad Bunny in the Super Bowl, and including a nod to energy infrastructure in his amazing halftime show. I can't tell you how my LinkedIn feed just blew up with this particular image, and really grateful to see the conversation about energy just making such a main stage. And then, of course, we're talking about just the fact that the energy infrastructure in Puerto Rico has systemically faced so many issues. But, sometimes the last shall be first. And, one victory that has come out of all of this has been just the focus on local microgrids. So I'll get a little bit into our current centralized model versus distributed energy. So I see everybody posting these, beautiful clips of Bad Bunny's artful display of energy justice, or even lack thereof. And I'm just thinking to myself, in our marketplace right now, we have 12 projects in Puerto Rico where you can purchase your renewable energy credits from right now. So you can do more than post. You can make an impact. And in our program, 100% of those proceeds go to our community partners. And I'll cover that in a little bit. But the grid of the future is distributed. Currently, we have a centralized model, and that's it's great when you do a utility scale opportunity where you've got megawatts on megawatts, and acres and acres of land uses the same grid. That's great for renewables, but even more valuable, in our opinion, and also scientists agree, is a distributed opportunity where wherever you can, and that's not all places, as Maria was talking about very succinctly. You can co-locate those renewable generators on site. So they may look like healthcare and senior housing, solar on the top of this, solar on top of a domestic violence shelter. I'm speaking of actual projects that you're looking at in our marketplace on the screen. And so that's what Solar Stewards does, is open the opportunity for entities such as sports teams, but also tech companies, telecom companies, to buy their renewable energy from these particular very local projects. And I got to make sure I'm on time. I'll try to go a little quicker. So here's a really fun illustration of how social recs work. These are unbundled recs, meaning they're sold separately from the power. So in that way, the community partner is still receiving that solar energy, and instead of making the renewable claim themselves, because sometimes that's really not part of their priorities in going solar, they're selling their renewable energy attribute, their renewable energy credit, to a third party, such as a sports team, so they can meet their goals and foster that partnership. Very important. And as Mika mentioned, when we talk about impact, what does that mean? It's very important for us, and broadly, to make any claim that has that's verifiable and real. 100% of that revenue then goes to our community partner through a community benefit agreement. And the community benefit agreement is really community informed. It's the community saying, this is what we're going to use these resources for. So what do our community partners typically use the social rec revenue for? Well, one tier is basic access. So this project would not have moved forward if not for a social rec commitment. And in some professionals call this additionality, meaning you're with social recs adding this additional renewable resource to the grid. We find it is also just as valuable to create community value. So we heard a little bit about storage. Social recs could be used to bolster the project to add storage, which is critically important when you have communities that need this particular install to perform as a resiliency center. So meaning when the grid goes down, you still want to be able to offer emergency power. And that is, we've got a lot of those types of projects in our marketplace. And 3 is restorative justice. Let's provide a new revenue stream for communities while including them in our transition. So hyperlocal micro markets are what we are creating, and that's just a nod to the fact that you can pick an individual project in our marketplace. Typically, our buyers pick several, but you can draw a radius, just like if you are familiar with LEED certification and the local materials. Very similar with our opportunities in our marketplace. And just to say, one of the great things about renewable energy credits are you can buy them in any state. And one of the strong facets of our program being based in Atlanta, some states like Illinois have really advantageous policy. They've got community solar. They've got the workforce element kind of baked in at a policy level. But as it stands today, only 24 states plus DC have anything about community solar in their state legislation. So it's not available everywhere. But what you can do is buy a renewable energy credit anywhere a renewable energy is generated if they're registered. And we use all the same registries as any other traditional rec. So this, as you may see, maybe it's a little tiny on your screen. We put this slide together for some MBA conversations at one point. So, but imagine your team there as well. And I think the yellow is to indicate energy burdened cities. But trust and believe, there's an energy burdened community in every corner of this country and arguably the world. That could use a social rec partner. And I just want to emphasize that we pass 100% of those proceeds. Then, of course, we have this really cool UN Sport for Climate Action. Just wanted to point out that we meet 11 of these 17 SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals, and both objectives of this we meet very deliberately. So partnerships and collaboration, what could be achieved when we work together, and of course engaging communities and fans is a very visible opportunity. Here's a nice little screenshot of our marketplace, and I'll talk a little bit about our business model coming up. But our membership gives the access to our marketplace, so you can choose what actual projects work for you. And additionally, we have included and integrated in our marketplace the climate and economic justice screening tool, which gives this really detailed information on what the area around that to a census tract level is looking like. So you might think, why would I buy social recs from this particular neighborhood? And you can find data that supports why they could really use an additional partner in their climate and mitigation goals. So I want to get into just some of the people, communities that we target, mission. I feel like from a sports application, it's more of a geographic conversation, but a lot of our climate stewards or buyers choose, a distinction like we want school districts or we want all the brownfields or, where the air quality is the roughest. Those are the projects we want. And in our marketplace, you can search specifically for those. So fun time to get into the case studies very quickly. This is a community solar project. So yes, you can buy social recs from community solar, and Maria talked about their cool community solar project. This is an example of a compliance market. This is in Baltimore, so the state of Maryland does have a rec framework, fortunately for them. So this was just even more benefit for them. And similarly, this as what Maria was sharing, this community solar targeted 100% low and moderate income subscribers. It was located on a school, all the trainings, all the bells and whistles. Love that one. Indiana was really great. Really proud of the work we're doing in Indiana because Consumer Reports said a couple years ago that it's the hardest place to do rooftop solar. But, we're attracted to a challenge, right? So Indiana is a state where we've got several really exciting partnerships. T-Mobile was the buyer here, 3 school districts, and they're using their social rec funds from everything from a full-time school nurse to STEM and STEAM labs. I was just here. Here's the superintendent giving a quote here in New Pekin, Indiana, seeing their 3D printer labs. It's just super fun. Very tangible opportunity to showcase what climate action can do. And, I saw a little quote from a mayor, and I was hoping that we had that included in this slide. Yeah, here we do. Yes. So we got a quote from a mayor. This is Salt Lake City. They're just a wonderful partner for years. They picked one multicultural center that you see right here. This is a real picture of the solar there. They've monetized these renewable energy credits as social recs, and they're using it to fund a energy equity fund in addition to other revenue streams, but specifically ours for this year and last year are going to fund micro food grants, which is kind of cool because when all the SNAP and energy conversations were going down about food scarcity, it's cool to tie that energy purchases could help with that. So I mentioned 100% of our social rec revenue goes to our community partners. So how do you stay in business? How do you do any of this work, right? We're a social enterprise. Well, effectively, we're a software as a service. We have a membership. And because we're so excited about the local aspect that sports really have in communities, and because we've got so many community partners that are just really eager for partnerships, we have a special rate for Green Sports Alliance members, and also recognizing your leadership and the opportunity to bring these types of this information and opportunity to your membership. So we want to certainly a nod to that. If you scan this, you'll get our link tree. It's got all types of information. Follow us on LinkedIn. That's the only socials that we're really active on. But be happy to follow up with more about our special, you can call it a promotion. I don't think there's a necessary timeline on it right now. But more information about our membership, our community partners. We just love to do a micro market around your city and your team, and then showcase what we can all do together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Great presentation. I will open it up for Q&A in the chat, but I also have a number of questions just to ask you if we don't have questions that come into the chat. I think first question that I have, and you touched on the importance of resilience. That is our theme this year for our summit. So I just wanted you to expand on that a little bit more. How how do your projects help with resilience? Why is that so important for our energy grids? And then how does the buyer of the social rec actually play such a crucial role in the resilience in those communities that they're supporting?
Thank you for that question, Mika. And we love being on theme, right?
Exactly.
When you're in a community and you have solar, your array is typically grid tied, which means from a safety standpoint, it will shut down when the grid shuts down. That's called anti-islanding, and it's a safety measure for linemen and women when they're fixing. They don't need any back current that's going to electrocute anybody. But with the right type of bimodal setup, if I may get super nerdy, you can have your inverter and storage on site to create a battery, a microgrid, if you will. And so, that's pairing that with a battery storage and having that additional functionality is really critical. And so, through our marketplace, you can choose, okay, I want to support all of the projects that really need this additional functionality because solar just off the shelf, it's going to be grid tied. It's the solar I have in my house, that's the case, right?
Hmm.
So with social recs, not only are you supporting that particular project, but then they can use that social rec revenue to pay for that additional battery capability because it is an additional cost. Additionally, operations and maintenance is a really popular function that our community partners choose. So hopefully that answers the question, maybe in a little bit too much detail. But it is critically important that we have more of these places for people to shelter in these increasingly violent weather events.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That definitely answered the question well. I'm curious, kind of as a follow-up question there, as someone looking at all the different rec options out there, can you talk a little bit about, I think there's some confusion sometimes. You put solar on your venue or, wherever you are actually located, and that has, the obvious tangible impact because you can see it. But as the buyer, investing in solar, is that solar that wouldn't be there otherwise if you didn't invest in it? Does the rec, like, why is that rec actually important to commoditize the rec and purchase the rec that's separated from the actual solar itself?
Right. Well, that's a great question. For us, that's that basic tier. In some instances, yes, and particularly as resources that a lot of our communities were planning on and on a federal level have been pulled back. Now they're looking at the economics of their project, and it's just not going to move forward. So we just need an additional partner to help them and someone and one of the distinctions and I'm glad that wanted to make sure to mention this. These can be shorter term, opportunities. So 3 years, 5 years, and that's up to our community partners as well. So if they know that you're committed to buying their social recs for the next 5 years, they can take that to their financier and get the capital that they need. And so you're supporting, that one entity in moving forward in the project. But we don't stop there. Also, we have that community value tier, which we find, that we just talked about. That's great for storage.
Hmm. Yeah, okay. And yeah, that's helpful to understand the shorter term, impact of them as well. I'm curious, you touched a little bit on the state legislation that can create some tricky environments for people to navigate if they're trying community solar or otherwise. Can you go just a little bit more into if I'm working at a venue and I'm trying to consider solar, what should I be aware of? What state legislation should I be aware of? And then how does working with you kind of have that benefit no matter where you are in the country?
Yeah, well, we certainly understand, and I started my solar career in California, where there's just historically have been, even if some of that has regressed, just incredible policy for a lot of different options, right? But sadly, that's not everywhere. But everywhere in the United States, you can sell an unbundled rec currently,
Mhm.
right? And so, we really wanted to create an opportunity where the community could participate in these benefits that wasn't dependent on policy. You went over renewable portfolio standards earlier. And that's just a way through legislation that more green is added to the grid. But we work in both voluntary, as in as was in the presentation earlier. You all are leading that purchase as opposed to a compliance market where it's more of a requirement.
Hmm.
But unbundled rec is everywhere a megawatt hour of renewable energy is generated. And there are certain registries that make sure that that's not double counted. We work with those. Every rec works with those in the United States. We just have an extra layer of being able to point to actual projects and make sure the actual revenue goes to community impact.
That's great. Yeah, I know the policy world can be complicated. So if you're listening, you should ask Dana if you have questions rather than me. But we have some questions in the audience, but I just wanted one more question for you, Dana. Anything exciting that anything new coming up that you're excited about for the year? We really appreciate you extending that opportunity for all of our members to get involved. But anything you wanted to highlight in 2026 before we go on to some audience questions?
Well, this could be a little sound a little counter, but the stress of rising bills has really created a little bit more innovation and awareness on what could be done on a local level with this infrastructure. So on one side, it's not good news that folks are really getting pinched with those bills. But at the same time, we're seeing more of that critical infrastructure being developed and more partnerships coming out of that. And I think that's a great thing.
That's great. Well, keep up the great work. I'm going to answer or ask some of the questions. For Maria, you mentioned the decision on how to go about procuring renewable energy was very cross-functional. How did your teams all learn about an industry likely pretty foreign to most of them? Do you think there would have been benefits from having internal sustainability or energy expertise? And do you see the Cubs or other teams moving towards this approach?
Yeah, how did we learn? I mean, research, and this was before AI too. So I think AI is a really helpful version of that. Obviously, you have to fact check everything, but like that's very powerful to understand like complex things and, run models for you. But, we did a ton of research. I I think one of the hardest things for us was trying to find like third parties that didn't have a stake in the game, and that weren't trying to like sway us one way. So I think that was like one challenge of trying to find the right people as we like tried to navigate through like the energy markets of like, okay, is this person telling us something because like they want to be involved in it, or are they like actually trying to help? So I think that was like a tricky piece to navigate. Some of the resources like we leaned on our energy broker as a data point. We had like our general consultants weigh in, but also like specialized, which I think it was that plus we had like other corporate partners who could help us. So I think if you ask around and ask the right people in your organization, they're going to have someone you can lean on. And if not, like for us, it was worth paying the small incremental amount as we were making like a huge decision. But obviously, lean on people like the GSA who can also set you up with like trusted advisors as well. It's complicated and it's changing. Like I mean, ask Dana. Like she's an expert in this space because one of the questions was like, would it benefit to have someone internal? Like, I don't think so. I think you need to kind of like triangulate your approach by asking a lot of different people in this game. And like I said, it changes, it's complicated. So like having one person like internally, I don't think is the answer here. So I think you do have to like kind of triangulate like for yourself and what your limitations and what your risk tolerance is for what you want to do. Um, and then I think the last part of this you said is how to should other teams move toward this approach? I don't know. I almost think you have to. Like it just touches so many people in the organization. Like I'm in operations and we can't make like a unilateral decision for something this expensive. And I don't think we could have gotten the value that, our corporate partnership team went out and found. And we wouldn't have known that that was a good deal without our strategy team and finance team. So I think you have to have it be kind of like this cross-functional team that evaluates, opportunities like this, especially when they're large. It's also just a great opportunity to get people involved in your organization in sustainability that maybe have never touched it before. You make it a financial decision, and then all of a sudden everyone's interested, which is great. Because not only do you get their expertise, but you get their attention, and then you can show them like, hey, look how great this is. Look how the community responded. Look what we're doing on the impact side. So you can really make them like part of the solution. And then you can say, I told you so. It was a great idea to do this.
Mm. Thanks, Maria. Another question right back at you. What percentage of green power do you have at Wrigley Field?
So we don't have any yet. It's not, we haven't gone shovels in the ground yet with Invenergy. So looking forward to answering that, when the service agreement's finalized and they, break ground and we get this done.
Any other questions?
There were some on the registration.
Hmm.
Um, One of them is from Andy from the University of Illinois. He said, "What can venues do to reduce demand as well as source renewable energy?" I mean, that was kind of answered, but how about reduce demand?
We're in a demand response program. So it was from, you said the University of Illinois. So I don't know. I think that's a city thing that we're opted into, but there may be, something in your local city where you can opt into that, which is, when there's peak demand responses on the grid, they call you and they say, hey, can you reduce your energy load? And we do. So I think that's a really cool opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and the biggest one is just turn off your lights when you leave.
I'll add in there. We have our awards this year, our Play to Zero awards. We're recognizing both people who are purchasing renewable energy, so procuring RECs, and then also people who have energy efficiency, so reducing the amount of energy that they're actually using on a per capita basis. So there will be cool case studies or folks you can follow up with after the awards to see how people have actually been able to reduce the amount of energy that they're using, which is, always our first suggestion is use less and of course procure renewables for those that you are using.
And this one was kind of already answered, but maybe just to reiterate, this is from Lydia from the Bonneville Foundation. How do renewable energy credits fit into impactful offsite renewable energy solutions?
Well, anytime that you are making a renewable energy claim, you're using a renewable energy credit. So, as Mika shared, it's kind of the currency of being able to account for this particular generation. As far as impact off-site, it's just a matter of procuring that renewable energy from projects that benefit communities. And we spend extensive time locating and vetting these opportunities for our buyers, in addition to making sure that 100% of the revenue from that purchase. So just a word of caution: you want to make sure that impact means that something's happening for that community on the ground. So a little quality control is certainly needed there. But that being said, these opportunities are critically important to engaging more folks in this conversation, and I feel like we're only going to see more of that moving forward.
Yeah, I'll jump in there real quick as well. Just to piggyback off that, I mean, Maria mentioned putting renewables on site could generate 1% of the power that they use. So think of the importance of the REC as an instrument to measure because we don't want just 1% of the power being renewable. We want all of the power being renewable. So it needs to be offsite. And the only way that you can know that you're purchasing the renewable is through a REC because the energy just goes into the grid. You can't track it any other way. So you kind of see the power there. Any venue that can have 1% on site but can have up to 100% off site, of course, there's power in investing in some of these off site solutions.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll give you back 2 minutes of your day. Thank you so much, Maria and Dana and Mika. What an awesome conversation. If anyone has follow-up questions, you can feel free to reach out to me. My email was put into the chat at the very beginning, and I can point you in the direction of where you need to go.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you. Have a good one.
Thanks, everyone.